Her fingers traced slow, lazy circles on my thigh beneath the dining table. My breath hitched. I glanced across the flickering candlelight, straight into me husband's eyes. He was smiling, sipping his wine, completely unaware. Or maybe not. Maybe this was exactly what he wanted. Because this, she Wash's idea in the first place. But before I tell you how I got here, letting Ganather woman tease me under the table while my husband sat right there, I need to take you back to the beginning of how a simple birthday wish turned into something far more complicated and unforgettable. Before we dive in, if you're hooked already, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who enjoys juicy true style relationship stories. Now, here's how it all started. Mark and Andy had been married for 10 years, a full decade of togetherness. We had a decent home in the Dallas suburbs, 2 Labradors, good jobs, and a calendar filled with family barbecues, wine nights, and routine doctor appointments. People said we were a festable couple, that we had it all figured out. The truth, we were bored. We had slipped into that quiet, dangerous space in marriage where everything looks good on the outside, but inside you're slowly craving something, anything, to shake things up. I didn't realize how deeply Mark felt it too until his birthday. It started like any other birthday celebration. I had made his favorite medium rare steak with garlic butter mushrooms and a bottle of red we've been saving since our trip to Napa. After dinner, we moved to the couch, half tipsy and a little nostalgic. The candles flickered on the coffee table as he leaned back and smiled. You've been good to me, you know, he said, stroking my arm. I smiled, curling into his side. I chuckled 10 years, and we've barely ever talked about that crazy stuff. What crazy stuff? He looked at me sideways. You know, fantasies now. We'd flirted with the idea of what ifs before, silly conversations in bed. Stuff neither of us took seriously, but this felt different. There was a hint of real curiosity in his tone. Okay, I said, teasing. Hit me. He hesitated, then laughed. You'll think I'm a freak. No, I won't. He took a sip of wine. Fine. I've always had this fantasy. Watching you with a woman. I blinked. Iman. Not just watching, he went on, but idea of seeing you different, lit up, unpredictable. I laughed, partly out of shock, partly out of discomfort. Oh wow, I said. That's specific. You asked. He said, suddenly sheepish. Is to eat him. His eyes weren't mocking. He wasn't joking. He had meant it. That night, we ended up laughing it off. I teased him about it the next morning. So you want to be a creepy husband watching from the shadows? He grinned. Only if you let me. We dropped it after that, but something about the way he said it, it stuck. A week later, I found myself thinking about it during a hot yoga session. Not because I wanted to please Mark, but because something about the idea made my stomach flutter. And that's when I met her, Jasmine. She walked into the studio like she owned the floor. Curvy, confident, covered in sweatpants. An attitude, shelled her mat, next to mine, flashed me a wink, and said, hope you don't mind if I breathe loud. I forget I'm in public. I laughed. She was bold, relaxed, and magnetic. We talked after class. She was recentalizing, worked in marketing, and lived about 10 minutes from me. Before I knew it, we were grabbing smoothies and talking about men, relationships, and how yoga pants had basically become our second skin. I didn't tell Mark about her at first. I didn't know how to explain the way Jasmine made me feel. It wasn't single quotes romantic, at first, but it was something. A few weeks passed. Jasmine and I became regulars at yoga. She started dropping flirtatious comments I couldn't ignore. You've got a dangerous smile, she said once, her voice low, eyes fixed on mine. Makes people want to say yes to things they shouldn't. I blushed, laughed it off, but my mind wandered. I started imaging things I hadn't before. Not just her lips or her fingers or her breath on my skin, but Mark watching, wanting, whispering, yes, from the shadows. The fantasy that had once seemed absurd started to feel dangerously real. One night, I came home from dinner with Jasmine. Mark was watching a late-night game, half asleep on the couch. I sat beside him, my heart racing. You remember your birthday wish? I asked. He blinked. The one you said was freaky. I nodded. I think I found her. I think I found her. The words came out quieter than I expected, almost like a dare. I wasn't sure. I wanted him to take. Mark sat up straighter on the couch. The TV game, suddenly a distant background noise. You're serious? I nodded, chewing on my bottom lip. Her name's Jasmine. We met at yoga. She's different, confident, flirty. He blinked at me, stunned. Then her smiled. You're messing with me. I'm not. I paused, my heartbeat in my ears. You said it was your fantasy. I've been thinking about it, and maybe it's mine, too. He studied me in silence for a long time. And then he whispered, what would that even look like? I leaned forward, brushing his arm. Let's find out. We didn't make a plan right away. It wasn't ordering takeout or picking Amity. It took weeks of subtle glances, unsaid things, flirtation, and tension. I continued spending time with Jasmine. Nothing explicit happened between us. But the heat was always there, just under the surface, and I knew she felt it, too. One Saturday, after a long class, we were sitting outside a smoothie shop. The sun was warm, the air smelled like summer, and Jasmine was twirling her straw between her fingers. You ever do something completely out of character just to feel something again? Shisked, staring off into the distance. He looked at her. Maybe why? She turned and smiled. Because I want to do something out of character. The invitation was in her eyes, and I accepted that night. I told Mark, I'm going to invite her over. He was quiet at first, pacing. You're sure about this? No, I admitted, but I want to see Wu. His eyes burned with curiosity and tension. Are you doing this for me or for you? I didn't answer because the truth was it was both. I texted Jasmine on Thursday. Hey, we're having wine and dinner, Saturday night. Nothing fancy, just come hang out with us. Her reply came almost instantly. You sure your husband won't mind mebbing there? I stared at the screen for a moment before typing back. It was actually his idea. There was a pause. Then now I'm curious. I'll be there. Saturday came faster than he expected. I spent more time getting ready that night than I had in years. Soft waves in my hair. A deep green dress that clung to my waist. Not too much makeup. Just enough to look effortless. Mark wore his usual dark jeans and a button-down shirt. Casual. Nervous. When Jasmine arrived, I nearly lost me breath. She wore a wine-colored wrap dress with a slit so high it made meeples skip. Her curly hair was pinned loosely, and her eyes sparkled like she already knew what she was walking into. Well, she said, stepping inside, ya both, clean up nice. You're not so bad yourself, I said, trying to keep my voice light. We poured wine, made small talk. Music played low in the background. The air buzzed with the time, and none of us acknowledged, but we all felt. Dinner was light, shrimp, linguine, roasted asparagus, and laughter that hit your nerves. Then came the wine refills. The lights dimmed, and Jasmine leaned in just a little too close. She was telling a story about some ridiculous dates she'd been on, and her hand rested lightly on me knee. I glanced at Mark. He was watching us, slowly twirling his wineglass, pretending to be casual, but I knew him better than anyone. He was burning inside. Jasmine's fingers traced a slow circle on my knee, then slid an inch higher. My breath caught. I looked at her. She looked at me, and in that moment, without a word, a silent agreement passed between us. We were crossing a line. Megaphone. If this scene has your heart racing, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who appreciated real relationship stories. Things are just getting started. We didn't make a scene out of it. No declarations, no dramatic music or candles blown out all at once. It just happened. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Jasmine curled beside me on the couch. Mark sat across from us, ice flicking between us like a man stuck between a dream and disbelief. Jasmine reached for my hand. I let her. She played with my fingers as we sipped wine and listened to old records. Then she leaned in and whispered something in me ear. You're even more beautiful when you're being watched. I felt Mark tense. I didn't look at him. I looked at her. No, we danced. I don't even remember. We'll put the music on. But suddenly Jasmine pulled me to my feet and spun me in the center of the room. Her hand slid down my arms, across my waist. "Ya nervous?" she asked. Terrified. "Good. That means you're alive." Her hands moved, the way she whispered in my ear, the way Mark sat completely still across the room. It wasn't just about physical tension, it was power, electricity, discovery, and in that moment, I was no longer just this wife, or her friend. I was something else entirely. Nothing happened that couldn't be but everything changed that night. She kissed my neck, brushed her lips against mine, teased me with her breath. Mark watched every second, eyes dark, jaw tight. Not once did he touch either of us. He just sat there completely transfixed. It was his wish, but it was my awakening. By midnight, Jasmine stood totally. She leaned down and whispered to Mark, "Thank you for sharing her." Then she kissed my cheek and was gone. We didn't speak for a full minute after the door shut. Then Mark looked at me and said, "That was the hottest thing I've ever seen." I smiled, and for the first time in years I felt desired. It started with a text. Simple 2 words, "Tonight works." It had been nearly a week since Jasmine left our home with that teasing smile and whispered thanks. Neither Mark nor I had brought it up since. There was no post-mortem. No awkward questions. Just a lingering electricity in the air between us that we both pretended wasn't there until I texted her, and she said, Mark and I didn't talk much that day. We went about our normal routines, laundry, groceries, emails, work. But there was a silent countdown between us. Every look, every touch, every pause. By the time the sun began to set, we were both walking on tension. He asked once, "Are you sure?" And I said, "I want to know what it feels like, not what it looks like. What it feels like." She arrived in black jeans and a burgundy tank top. Her curls, piled high, lips tinted deep red. "I hope I'm no verdressed," she teased. "You're perfect," I said. Mark stood awkwardly for a moment before greeting her. There was a quiet, nervous energy between all of us, like we were about to do something sacred and dangerous. We poured drinks again, played music again, ate takeout this time, casual, light-hearted. But none of us were here for dinner. We were all waiting for the spark. And it came, slowly, softly, naturally. Jasmine curled on the couch beside me. As if it were the most normal thing in the. She tucked her legs under herself and leaned close. "Can I?" she whispered. I nodded. Her hands slid over mine, her fingers tracing the inside off me wrist. Mark sat opposite us. Not a word, not a movement, only his eyes, dark, focused, devouring. Megaphone. If this moment has your heart pounding, now's the perfect time to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and share this video. You don't want to miss what happens next. Jasmine leaned in, her lips were soft, sure, and warm. She kissed me slowly, not for shack or performance, but for feeling. I heard Mark inhale deeply from across the room. When our lips parted, she smiled at me. "You're shaking, no," I whispered. "Do you want to stop?" I shook my head. Mark leaned forward. "You okay?" "I'm more than okay." It wasn't rushed. There were no dramatic gestures or movie-like crescendos. Just 3 people learning how far they could go before breaking something permanent. Jasmine's hands rose gently. She explored me with reverence, not urgency. Every time her fingers brushed exposed skin, I felt like I was on fire. But not from lust alone. From bungseen. She made me feel like more than a wife, more than a fantasy, like a woman again. Mark sat frozen, mesmerized. I glanced at him between soft gasps and playful laughter. His eyes were wide, mouth parted. "You good?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "Keep going." She didn't touch him, he didn't touch us. That waist rule, spoken, unspoken, understood. This was my night, his gift. Her game. At one point she pulled me into her lap, her arms wrapped around my waist, lips brushing my ear. "You're delicious. You're nervous. You're evil when you smile." I shot back, breathless. "I'm just giving your husband the show off his life." I turned my head and met Mark's eyes. "You still with us?" He nodded like he was in a trance. I had never seen him so still, so affected, so turned on without ever being touched. We didn't go beyond suggestion that night. There were no clothes on the floor, no lines crossed that would break the YouTube barrier or my marriage, but there was plenty that would live in our minds forever. Jasmine kissed me again as we stood near the door, her hand brushing my waist, her breath warm on my skin. "Thank you," she said. "That was beautiful." Mark opened the door for her. She winked at him before walking out. After she left, the house felt heavy with memory. I turned to Mark. "Say something, head and speak." He walked up to me, wrapped his arms around me, and kissed me like he hadn't in years. Hungry, desperate, possessive. We made love that night like we were discovering each other for the first time. There was no jealousy in his touch, only fire, only need. Hugh whispered in my ear, "That was the sexiest thing I've ever witnessed." Andy whispered back, "That was just the beginning." The next morning, I made a coffee, barefoot, wearing nothing but his shirt. Mark walked into the kitchen, kissed my cheek, and asked, "Will we see her again?" I shrugged, sipping slowly. Maybe, but inside, I already knew the answer. Morns felt different after Jasmine. There was something in the air, charged, unfamiliar, a low thrum that pulsated beneath our routine life. Mark and I would wake up, exchange sleepy kisses, and linger just a little longer in bed. Like we were holding on to something we hadn't known we were. He didn't ask me questions, and he didn't offer details. There was no need. We both knew. The thing about crossing a line is it's never as straight as you imagined. Yeah, you tell yourself, it'll just be once, just for fun, just a fantasy. But when the fantasy feels better than the reality, what happens when the version of you that exists inside that fantasy feels more alive than the one you live with every day? Jasmine and I didn't turn into lovers. Not in the way most people would think. We didn't fall in love. We didn't run off together. We didn't even see each other that often. But every once in a while, I'd text her. She'd respond with a winking emoji, or a cheeky question. Does your husband miss me? Sometimes I'd invite her for lunch. Other times, she'd swing by for wine and conversation. Never joining in. Always just nearby, pretending to be absorbed in whatever game was on. And once in a while, we'd let the tension breath again. A kiss in the hallway, a hand on my back, a lingering gaze. Never asked me to stop. In fact, after Jasmine's second visit, things between us had only gotten better. He touched me more, looked at me differently, like he finally saw me not just as his wife, Buddha's, a woman with her own desires, her own fear, and for once in our marriage, I felt like I was in control. Not just Ophim, but of myself. I remember one night a few months later, we were lying in bed, sheets tangled, both of us catching her breath. Mark turned to me, brushing hair from my cheek. You ever regret it? I knew what he meant. I thought for a moment. No, I said. Do you? He shook his head. Not even close. We laid there in silence for a while, listening to the ceiling fan hum above us. Then I whispered, it's strange. I didn't even think about what other people would say. I don't care because they didn't know exactly, and they wouldn't because this wasn't for them. This was ours. If you're enjoying this anonymous confession, second, to like this video, share it with someone who'd understand Thethril, and subscribe for more real-style relationship stories told like no one else can. Over time, Jasmine drifted in and out of our lives. She got a new job, dated someone new, traveled for a while. But we stayed in touch quietly occasionally, like a secret thread tying us together. Every now and then Mark would ask about her casually. I'd smile and say she was doing fine. And sometimes, rarely, I'd see that flicker in his eyes again. The one that said I'd watch you again in a heartbeat. But I didn't need it anymore because I had changed. I no longer saw myself as just a wife or a woman holding her marriage together with routine and politeness. I had become someone who could take risks, someone who could say yes to something outrageous and survive it, even enjoy it. Do I regret it? No, I don't regret saying yes to him that night. I don't regret texting Jasmine. I don't regret letting her in. I don't regret the thrill, or the fire, or the look in my husband's eyes as I unraveled right in front of him. Some stories don't have villains or victims. Some are just secrets you carry with Asmao. They say what happens in the shadows eventually comes to light. But not. This stays in the dark between Mark and Jasmine. And now you. Because for the first time, I've told